Anglicized Irish names. To resume the history of surnames in Ireland, we have seen in the last article that in the year 1682, the inferior classes in Ireland, especially in Westmeath and the adjoining counties, were very forward in accommodating themselves to the English usages, particularly in their surnames, quote, which by all manner of ways they strove to make English or English-like, end quote. This was more particularly the case after the defeat of the Irish at the Boyne and Aughrim, when the Irish chieftains were conquered and the pride of the Irish people was humbled. At this period, the Irish people, finding that their ancient surnames sounded harshly in the ears of their conquerors and new English masters, found it convenient to reduce them as much as possible to the level of English pronunciation. And they accordingly rejected in almost every instance the O and Mac, and made various other changes in their names so as to give them an English appearance. Thus, a gentleman of the O'Neills in Tyrone changed his old name of Phelim O'Neill to Felix Neil. As we learned from an epigram written in Latin on the subject by a witty scholar of the name Conway or Mac Conway, whose Irish feeling had not been blunted by the misfortunes of the times, the following translation of the epigram is perhaps worth preserving. Quote, all things has Felix changed, he has changed his name. Yea, in himself he is no more the same. Scorning to spend his days where he was reared, to drag out life among the vulgar herd, or trudge his way through bogs in bracks and brogues, he changed his creed and joined the Saxon rogues. By whom his sires were robbed, he laid aside the arms they bore for centuries with pride, the ship, the salmon, and the famed red hand, and blushed when called O'Neill in his own land. Poor paltry skulker from thy noble race, in Felix, Felix, weep for the disgrace. End quote. Many others, even of the most distinguished family names, were anglicized in a similar manner as O'Connor to Connors and Conyers, O'Brien to Brian, McCarthy to Carty. The respectability of the O's and Macs, however, was kept up on the contingent by the warriors of the Irish Brigade, who preserved every mark that would prove them to be of Irish origin. The Irish, having at this period become so illustrious for their military skill, valor, and politeness, that they were sought after by all the powers on the continent of Europe. Thus we find O'Donnell made Field Marshal, Chief General of Cavalry, Governor General of Transylvania, and Grand Croix of the Military Order of St. Theresa. The O'Flanagan of Tuara in the county of Fermanagh became colonel in the imperial service, and his brother James O'Flanagan was Lieutenant General of Dillon's regiment in France. O'Mahony became a count and Lieutenant General of His Catholic Majesty's forces, and his ambassador plenipotentiary at the court of Vienna. Macaulay of the county of Cork became colonel of a regiment in Spain. O'Nenny of Tyrone settled at Brussels, count of the Roman Empire, councillor of state to Her Imperial Majesty, and chief president of the Privy Council at Brussels. A branch of the family of the O'Callaghan, who followed the fortunes of King James II, became Baron O'Callaghan and Grand Veneur to His Serene Highness the Prince Margrave of Baden-Baden. The head of the O'Mullallies, or O'Lallies, of Tulloch Nadala, 2 miles to the west of Tuam in the county of Galway, settled in France and became Count Lally Tollendal and a general in the French service. O'Connor Rowe became governor of Civita Vecchia, a seaport of great trust in the Pope's dominions, etc., etc. The O'Connor Dawn. The lustre derived from the renown of these warriors kept up the respectability of the O's and the Macs on the continent, and induced many of the Irish at home to resume these prefixes, especially the O. Thus, in our own time, the name of O'Connor Don was assumed by Owen O'Connor, Esquire, of Bellanagar, whose line was 7 generations removed from the last ancestors who had borne the name. And the name of the O'Grady has also been assumed by Mr. O'Grady of Kilballyowen in our own time, though none of his ancestors had borne it since the removal of that family from Tongraney in the county of Clare. Miles John O'Reilly, late of the Heath House, Queen's County, was at one time disposed to style himself the O'Reilly, but I regret to say that his circumstances prevented him. Daniel O'Connell of Derrynan Abbey prefixed the O after it had been dropped for several generations. And I have heard it constantly asserted that he has no title to the O because his father, who did not know his pedigree, never prefixed it. But such assertions have no weight with us, for we know that O'Connell's father never mentioned his own name in the original Irish without prefixing O, because it would be imperfect without it. And whether O'Connell can trace his pedigree with certainty up to Connell, chief of the tribe in the 10th century, we know not, but we know that he ought to be able to do so. In like manner, Morgan William O'Donovan of Montpellier near Cork has not only reassumed the O, which his ancestors had rejected for 8 generations, but also styled himself the O'Donovan, chief of his name, being the next of kin to the last acknowledged head of the family, the late General Richard O'Donovan of Bonlahan, whose family became extinct in the year 1829. His example has been followed by Timothy O'Donovan of O'Donovan Cove, head of a respectable branch of the family. We like this Irish pride of ancestry, and we hope that it will become general before many years will have passed. We like this Irish pride of ancestry, and we hope it will become general before many years have passed. There are other heads of families who retain their Irish names with pride, as Sir Lucius O'Brien of Dromaland in Clare, MacDermot Rowe of Alderford in the county of Roscommon, MacDermot of Coolavan, who is the lineal descendant of the chief of Moylurg, and whose pedigree is as well known as that of any royal family in Europe, O'Hara of Leany in the county of Sligo, O'Dowda of Bunnyconnellan near Ballina in the county of Mayo, O'Loughlin of Burren in the north of the county of Clare, McCarthy of Carrignavar near Cork, who represents one of the noblest families in Ireland, McGillicuddy of the Reeks in the county of Kerry, a collateral branch of the same great family, O'Kelly of T. Cooley in the county of Galway, O'Moore of Clough Castle in the King's County, Moore of Farrell, MP, O'Flaherty of Lemonfield in the same county, and John Augustus McGagan O'Neill of Bunowan Castle in the west of Connemara in the same county. We are not aware that any of the old families of Leinster have preserved their ancient names unadulterated. Of these, the Kavanaghs of Boris in the county of Carlow are the most distinguished, and we indulge in a hope that the rising generation will soon resume the name of MacMurrough Kavanagh, a name celebrated in Irish history for great virtues as well as great vices. Among the less distinguished families, however, the translation and anglicizing of names have gone to so great a degree as to leave no doubt that in the course of half a century, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to distinguish many families of Irish name and origin from those of English name and origin, unless indeed inquirers shall be enabled to do so by the assistance of history and physiognomical characteristics. The principal cause of the change of these names was the difficulty which the magistrates and lawyers, who did not understand the Irish language, found in pronouncing them, and in consequence, their constant habit of ridiculing them. This made the Irish feel ashamed of all such names as were difficult of pronunciation to English organs. And they were thus led to change them by degrees, either by translating them into what they conceived to be their meanings in English, by assimilating them to local English surnames of respectable families, or by pairing them in such a manner as to make them easy of pronunciation to English organs. The families among the lower ranks who have translated, anglicized, or totally changed their ancient surnames are very numerous and are daily becoming more and more so. Besides the cause already mentioned, we can assign two reasons for the rage which prevails at present among the lower classes for names. First, the English language is becoming that universally spoken among these classes, and there are many Irish surnames which do not seem to sound very euphoniously in their modern language. And secondly, the names translated or totally changed are, with very few exceptions, of no celebrity in Irish history. And when they do not sound well in English, the bearers naturally wish to get rid of them in order that they should be considered of Atticotic or plebeian Irish origin. As this change is going on rapidly in every part of Ireland, I shall here, for the information, if not for the amusement of the reader, give some account of the Milesian or Scotic names that have thus become metamorphosed. Humours of Shonianism. And first, of names which have been translated correctly or incorrectly. In the county of Sligo, the ancient name of O'Moclogy has been metamorphosed into stone, from an idea that cloggy, the latter part of it, signifies a stone. But it is a mere guess translation, so that in this instance, this people may be said to have taken a new name. In the county of Leitrim, the ancient and by no means obscure name of MacConova has been rendered Ford, from an erroneous notion that Ava, the last part of it, is a corruption of Aha, of a ford. This is also an instance of false translation, for we know that MacConova, chief of Munster, Kenny, in the county of Leitrim, took his name from his ancestor Cusnava, who flourished in the 10th century. In Thomond, the ancient name of O'Cnavan is now often anglicized Bowen, because Knarveen signifies a small bone. This change was first made by a butcher in Dublin, who should perhaps be excused as he conformed so well to the Act of 5 Edward IV. In Tyrconnell, the ancient name of Mulmogary is now always rendered early, because Mochirgi signifies early rising. My pronunciations are not perfect, I'm sorry. Stick with it. This version, however, is excusable, though not altogether correct. In Thomond, O'Marcacon is translated rider by some, but anglicized Markham by others. And in the same territory, O'Lahiv is made Guthrie, which is altogether incorrect. In Tyrone, the ancient name of MacRory is now invariably made Rogers, because Rogers is assumed to be the English Christian name corresponding to the Irish Ruairi or Rory. In Connemara, in the west of the county of Galway, the ancient name of Macconry is now always made King, because it is assumed that Ri, the last syllable of it, is from Rig, a king. But this is a gross error, for this family, who are of Dalcassian origin, took their surname from their ancestor Curoy in the genitive case, and has nothing to do with Ri, a king, and the kings of Connemara would therefore do well to drop their false name, a name to which they have no right, and resume their proper, ancient, and excellent name of MacConry, through which alone their pedigree and their history can be traced. These examples, selected out of a long list of Irish surnames erroneously translated, are sufficient to show the false process by which the Irish are getting rid of their ancient surnames. I shall next exhibit a few specimens of Irish surnames which have been assimilated to English or Scots ones from the fancied resemblance in the sounds of both. In Ulster, MacMahon, the name of the celebrated chiefs of Oriel, a name which, as we have already seen, the poet Spenser attempted to prove to be an Irish form of Fitz-Ursula is now very frequently anglicized as Matthews, and MacCowell, the name of the ancient chiefs of Kinnell Faraday, is anglicized Camphill or Campbell, Howell, and even Caulfield. In Thomond, the name of O'Hever is anglicized Howard among the peasantry and Ivers among the gentry, which looks strange indeed. And in the same county, the ancient name of O'Byrne is metamorphosed to Byron, while in the original locality of the name in Tir, Bruin, Nashina, in the east of the county of Roscommon, it is anglicized Bruin among the peasantry. But among the gentry, who know the historical respectability of the name, the original form of O'Byrne is retained. In the province of Connacht, we have met a family of the name of O'Herity, who anglicized their old Scotic name to Harrington, an innovation which we consider most unpardonable. In the city of Limerick, the illustrious name of O'Shaughnessy is metamorphosed to Sandys by a family who know their pedigree well, for no other reason perhaps than to disguise the Irish origin of the family. But we are glad to find it retained by the Roman Catholic Dean of Ennis, and also Mr. O'Shaughnessy of Galway, who, though now reduced to the capacity of a barber in the town of Galway, is the chief of his name, and now the senior representative of Gwara Aigna, King of Connacht, who is celebrated in Irish history as the personification of hospitality. Strange turn of affairs. In the county of Derry, the celebrated old name of O'Brolachan is made to look English by being transmuted to Bradley, an English name of no luster, at least in Ireland. In the county of Fermanagh, the O'Creans have changed their name to Creighton, for no other reason than because a Colonel Creighton lives in the vicinity. And in the county of Leitrim, O'Fergus, the descendant of the ancient Iranochs of Rosniver, has, we are sorry to say, lately changed his name to Ferguson. Throughout the province of Ulster, generally, very extraordinary changes have been made in the names of the Aborigines, as MacTaig to Montague, O'Mulligan to Molyneux, MacGillicusky to Cosgrove, MacGilliglass to Green, O'Tualan to Toland and Tullis, O'Hay to Hughes, O'Carolyn to Carleton, as for instance our own William Carleton, the depictor of the manners, customs, and superstitions of the Irish, who is of the old Milesian race of the O'Carolans, the ancient chiefs of Clandermot in the present county of Derry. O'Horvan to Owen, MacGillyfinnan to Leonard, MacShane to Johnston, and even O'Neive to Agnew, O'Cleary to Clark, MacLave to Hand, McGuigan to Goodwin, O'Here to Hare, O'Lewin to Lamb, MacConnon to Canning, O'Haughey to Hoe, O'Conwy to Conway, O'Loinsey to Lynch, McNamee to Mead, McCluskey to Glasgow, and so on and so on. In Connacht, O'Grean is changed to Graham, O'Coolman to Coleman, O'Nachton to Norton, MacRannell to Reynolds, O'Hessa to Hussey, MacFidivis to Forbes, O'Hargadon to Hardiman. The learned author of the History of Galway and compiler of the Irish Minstrelsy is of this name, and not of English origin, as the present form of his name would seem to indicate. O'Mulfover to Milford, O'Timpon to Tenpenny, O'Canahan to Coiningham, O'Hine to Hinds and Hines, O'Mulvahill to Melville, O'Rourke to Rourke, MacGillicuddy to Cox and Woods. In Munster, O'Sesnan is changed to Sexton, O'Shanahan to Fox, O'Turran to Troy, O'Mulligan to Baldwin, O'Hiskeen to Hastings, O'Neill to Neville in every instance, O'Corey to Curry, O'Sheedy to Silk, O'Mulvaffer to Palmer, O'Trehy to Foot, O'Honeen to Green, O'Connick to Gunning, O'Morgorley to Morley, O'Kinsella to Kingsley and Tinaley, MacGillymeyer to Merriman, O'Heher to Hare, O'Failchon to Wolfe, O'Baron to Barrington, O'Keatsey to Keating, O'Conoive to Conway, O'Credan to Creed, O'Fihily to Pickley, O'Ahern to Heron, and so on and so on. Scores of similar instances might be given, but the number exhibited is sufficient to show the manner in which the Irish are assimilating their names with those of their conquerors.